Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us today on August 21st, 2025 for our latest webinar. The webinar, is your incident response plan ready for the real world? This is great topic, timely topic, and I'm pleased to be joined by two of my colleagues, Carl Bapora, the Cyber Intelligence Center team lead, and Talha Iqbal, the Senior Director of the Cyber Intelligence Center here at Stratagem Bell. So welcome to our event. My name is Beverly Wilkes. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager on the Cybersecurity team here, and we're so glad that you took time out of your day to join us. We're going to keep questions till the end. We had a few questions already come in, so we're going to keep those to the end. And with that, I'm going to hand over the speaking to my colleague, Talha. Talha, welcome.
Thank you for that, Bev. Welcome, everyone. My name is Talha Iqbal. Welcome to our webinar. I'm the director of our Cyber Intelligence Center at Stratagem, now a Bell Canada company. Today, we're going to discuss why a mature incident plan is essential to your organization, and we'll showcase how tabletop exercises validate those plans and prepare executives and incident responders to act under real-world pressure. Joining me today is Carl Bapora. Carl, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carl Bapora. As Beverly mentioned, I am one of the team leads here in the SOC at Stratagem. I will walk through how to ensure that your incident response plan is truly ready and break down the core component that makes a plan effective, focusing on the process, roles, context, escalation path, and playbooks.
Now, before we dive in, let's quickly go over today's agenda. We started with a brief introduction, which we are in now. Then we'll discuss why we need a mature incident response plan, essentially making the case for investing in a well-defined incident response process, which minimize chaos and minimize the impact to your organization when a real incident hits. Next, the core of our webinar will be key components of an incident response plan. Here we will do a deeper dive into what an effective incident response plan must contain. We will cover the incident response process itself, the importance of clearly defined roles and responsibilities, along with contact information both for business hours and outside business hours. We'll then look at the threat escalation protocol on how to classify incidents by severity and documenting response procedures or playbooks to support the response efforts. After that, we'll cover tabletop exercises focusing both on technical and executive teams. The tabletop exercises not only sharpen technical response capabilities, but also test your leadership decision making. It tests your communication, cross-functional team coordination, which are all critical to navigating a true cyber crisis. Finally, at the end, we'll have about 5 minutes for Q&A to answer any of your questions. With that said, let's jump into our first topic, which is why do we even need a mature incident response plan? Well, to start, we need a mature incident response plan because A, it provides a clear, repeatable process for handling security incidents, both quickly and effectively. Now, a structured incident response plan educates your team to know exactly what steps to take, who's responsible for each action item, and how to communicate and escalate internally. Your incident response plan, or rather a mature incident response plan, is a risk reduction tool. It doesn't eliminate the risk of cyber incidents, but it reduces the likelihood of a severe impact by ensuring that threats are A, contained quickly, damage is minimized, compliance regulatory obligations are met, and the organization can recover efficiently, limiting any financial, reputational, or operational impact or cost to the organization. In other words, a mature incident response plan transforms unpredictable crisis situation into manageable low-risk events. Now, I've been in an incident response call at 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning with no formal response plan in place. And trust me, it's chaotic. Everyone starts doing their own thing. Important tasks gets duplicated while critical steps are often overlooked. On the other hand, I've also participated in incident calls where we had a solid, matured practice plan. In those cases, everyone knew their roles. Everyone understood what communication was to be sent internally and externally. and we were able to mitigate the incident fairly quickly. Now, a well-defined plan means faster detection and containment of the incident, which can be a major difference between a minor event contained versus a full-blown malware outbreak or a crisis situation. Now, for example, if we detect a malware laterally moving within your network, you should have a clear process on how you can isolate that network segment and contain systems that are impacted rather than it impacting your entire organization, right? Now, another reason is business continuity. An incident response plan often works hand in hand with your disaster recovery and business continuity plans. So while your incident response plan focuses on security incidents itself, it ultimately helps maintain or quickly restore critical operations. For executives, the downtime and the recovery time makes a big difference, right? In terms of revenue, in terms of customer confidence, in terms of brand reputation. And recently, IBM published a report where they mentioned that a tested, mature incident response plan could save up to $500,000 per breach. Now, that's a direct cost avoidance, and not to mention the savings from brand reputational damage and legal costs after a crisis or a critical incident. Now, let's also understand that an incident response plan provides you peace of mind. Knowing that we have a playbook to handle incidents, it reduces anxiety in your team. Your security analyst, your IT staff, they should know that if something goes wrong, there is a defined procedure that they can follow, and they don't have to figure out how to respond to an incident on the fly. The executive team, on the other hand, they can understand and put their confidence that communication updates will come at the right time. Right decisions will be made by the right people. So it builds confidence across the organization. Now, with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Carl to talk about some key components of a mature IR plan. Carl, over to you.
Great point, Stella. So in summary, we need a mature incident response plan to be able to respond swiftly and effectively to incidents, and to also limit the damage, save cost, and keep our organization running smoothly, even under duress. It's about being proactive rather than reactive. No one can prevent 100% of incidents, but we can control how we respond when one occurs. Now that we understand the why, let's move on to the what. What does a strong incident response plan actually include? I will break down the key components that every incident plan should have. As you can see on the slide, we've listed the 5 major components. Our first component is the incident response process. This includes detection, analysis, containment, eradication, recovery, post-incident. Our second key point is roles and responsibility, which will be highlighted using the RACI model. Our third point is contact information. This contact information will include business hour details as well as after hours details. Our fourth point is threat escalation protocols, which will help us highlight the severity definitions based on impact and urgency. And last but not least, we have our response procedures and playbooks. We'll go through each of these in details, and I'll provide some context for each with practical details and examples. Excellent. Now let's look at the incident response process itself. This is really the heart of an incident response plan, and it follows a structured life cycle, as you can see on the slide. We begin with detection. This is where events are analyzed to determine whether what we're seeing is truly an indicator of compromise or an attack. Detections can come from monitoring tools, alerts, or even employees reporting something suspicious. It could be an alert that a system is communicating with a known bad IP or a user reporting ransomware on their screen. The goal here, essentially, is to spot the issue as early as possible. On to the next step, we have analysis. Often we say detection and analysis comes together. Once we've detected a potential incident, we need to investigate it. Here, we confirm whether it's a real incident, we determine the scope, We understand what systems and data are impacted, and the goal is to separate false positives from true positive incidents, as well as assess its severity. If a real incident occurs, we start figuring out the scope, which systems or data are affected. Is it an ongoing attack or is it a one-time event? Essentially, we want to be able to answer the question, what's going on and how bad is it? The next step, containment. Think of this as the triage. We want to stop the damage from spreading while preserving evidence. So an example of this would be isolating a compromised machine so the attack doesn't cascade further. Containment is essentially stopping the bleeding. An example will be if a workstation is compromised by malware, containment will be isolating that machine from the network. If an email phishing attack is in progress, containment will include blocking the malicious sender or URL enterprise-wide. After containment, we focus on eradication. This is essentially where we eliminate the root cause of the incident. This could mean removing malware, patching vulnerabilities, hardening systems, and disabling compromised accounts. Once the threat is removed and confirmed, we shift to recovery. This is about safely restoring and returning affected systems into productions and getting things back to normal. This could involve restoring systems from your backups, rebuilding clean servers, or simply re-enabling services. We want to verify that the systems are now secure and fully functional. For example, if we took our customer database offline during containment, recovering is bringing it online after ensuring it's patched and no backdoors remain. Finally, we have post-incident activities. This is often overlooked but critical. The incident response team documents what has occurred, evaluate how effective the response was, and update the plan based on lessons learned. From an executive perspective, this also includes when and how to notify leadership, regulators, and customers. In short, this lifecycle gives us a repeatable, disciplined framework for handling incidents. Skipping any of these steps or phases could cause incomplete resolutions or repeated compromise. Let's talk about roles and responsibilities, the second point. Now, an incident response process means nothing if you don't have the correct people assigned to make it happen. Clearly defining roles and responsibilities are the next key component. For those who might not be familiar, RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. It's a tool to map out who does what in a process. During an incident, one of the worst things is when people duplicate work or when critical tasks are missed entirely because everyone assumes someone else was handling it. I'm sure some of you have seen this happen. A good incident response plan prevents this by designating clear roles for every aspect of the response. Everyone on the response team should know exactly what they're responsible during the plan. For example, the incident manager is accountable for overall coordination. The technical lead is responsible for conducting the investigation and remediation. The communication manager is responsible for crafting and delivering internal and external messages. The legal advisor is consulted to ensure compliance with regulatory and contractual obligations. Another example would be the executive team is informed at key milestones so they can make timely strategic decisions. The key here is eliminating role confusion. In a crisis, no one should ever have to ask who's handling this. Everyone knows their place in the process. And just as important, backups are assigned to every role. If your primary incident manager is unavailable for any reason, the secondary steps in immediately. This ensures continuity and prevents delays in critical decisions. I like to use the example of a Formula One pit stop. In a race, every second counts, just like during a separate incident. The driver pulls in, within seconds, the crew has to change tires, they have to refuel, they have to adjust the car and get the car safely back on track. If even one rule is unclear, the stop takes too long, mistakes happen, and the entire race can be lost. Next up, we have contact information. Along with defining roles, the plan must include up-to-date contact information for all key players. Incident does not respect business hours, and that's why having accurate contact information of key stakeholders, both during and outside of business hours, is critical in an incident response plan. We should maintain a list of internal contacts for the incident response team, IT stakeholders, legal team, communications team, HR, and of course, the executive leadership team. But it's also important to include external contacts. Think about including your cyber insurance hotline, major vendors, or partners that you might need to inform. Perhaps you might even have to include the law enforcement contacts if an incident is severe and requires it. But at a minimum, all members of the incident response team should have their info documented and up to date. Just as important, the contact list should be stored offline in multiple locations. That way, even if the network is taken down by the threat actor, responders can still access it offline. Finally, the list must be kept up to date and tested. There's nothing worse than calling an outdated number during a real incident. We've had several tabletops drills where we actually tried calling after our contacts, and we realized some of the numbers have been changed or some of the key contacts have left the company. The plan should generate or designate an individual, maybe the incident manager or coordinator, to regularly review and update the contact list. In short, reliable contact information ensures we can mobilize the right people immediately and at any time. For my example, think of the old switchboard operators. Their job was to quickly connect you to the right person. In an incident response, it's the same. You need up-to-date contact list for internal teams and external partners, generally stored in multiple places and tested regularly. If you can't reach the right people, your response will delay. On to the next section. Let's talk about how we classify incidents and decide on escalation. A good incident response plan will define severity levels or incident categories based on impact and urgency. For instance, we might define severity 1 critical, which will indicate significant impact to your business. Another example will be a breach of sensitive customer data or a company-wide outage or a ransomware encrypting critical servers. It's quite simple. Whenever urgency is highest, we must respond immediately. Having clear severity level is important, so everyone speaks the same language with the same urgency during an incident. An example for severity 1 could be a major breach or outage that requires urgent executive involvement. In other words, drop everything, all hands on deck. A severity 2 high could entail a serious issue, which with significant impact, but it's localized and not business-wise. Severity 3 moderate, the incident is contained with limited impact, but it still needs attention and tracking. A severity 4 low will be minimal contact, often handled as part of routine operations, maybe even day-to-day operations. What really makes this effective are the timelines tied to the severity. For example, a severity 1 incident may require immediate action within 15 minutes, while a severity 3 or 4 issues can be handled with less urgency. Keep in mind, the incident manager or the incident handler has the authority to upgrade or downgrade severity as the situation evolves. If something that initially looks like a severity 3 suddenly starts spreading, it gets escalated instantly as a Sev 1, and we have all hands on deck. Having a defined structure ensures that urgency always matches the impact and everyone knows exactly how to prioritize their response.
All right. Thank you for recapping some of those critical components. Carl, I want to talk about the final component, which is having a detailed response procedure or threat-specific playbooks available to you. Now, response procedures or playbooks is where your incident response plan becomes truly actionable. They provide you predefined steps for different types of attack vectors, for different types of incidents, whether it's a ransomware, a phishing, a denial of service attack, or an insider threat. Essentially, an incident response playbook is a detailed, predefined procedure for a specific scenario which spells out what to do from the initial detection to the final resolution for that scenario. Now, each playbook should outline who does what and when, which would already be part of your incident response plan. For example, in a ransomware attack, an incident manager will declare the severity and initiates a call bridge. The security analyst collects evidence and starts investigating the scope and the impact. The IT operations team isolates the infected systems and stops scheduled backups that would impact operations. The network team would block any malicious IOCs, URLs, domains associated with the attack on the firewall or on the web gateways. Now, the communications manager, they draft an internal and external statements to key stakeholders. And the senior leadership team would determine the business impact and would question how quickly can we mitigate and recover from that incident. Now, the playbook in this case should cover all the technical and communication steps. It ensures that the right message goes out while the technical team mitigates the threat using the right action items. Also, you can incorporate a checklist so nothing critical gets missed. Even under pressure, when you're dealing with an incident, you can simply refer back to that checklist as a cheat sheet to ensure that you have captured all the key action items associated with the response procedure. Now, because threats evolve, playbooks should be regularly tested during tabletop exercises and update on a routine basis. Now, think of these playbooks as a recipe book. Each recipe gives you the exact steps, the exact ingredients, and the timings to get consistent results, even if different people are cooking. Incident response playbook works in a very similar fashion. They provide predefined steps, assign tasks, and include checklists so nothing gets missed. Tested and updated, they ensure that your team can follow a proven formula even under pressure and timely contain and recover from a situation. Now, when we talk about testing your incident response plan and your playbooks, the focus goes to tabletop exercises. Now, the question is, why do they matter? Well, think of tabletop exercise as a fire drill for cybersecurity. We simulate incidents in a discussion group format so that the whole team can walk through their responses in a safe but realistic environment. We're not pulling any plugs. We're not shutting down any systems. Instead, we're simulating an event of concern or an indicator of compromise and then talk through what would happen if a real incident occurred. This makes it a low risk but high value from a learning perspective for everyone involved. Now, it's important to stress these exercises aren't just for the SOC or the IT or the technical teams. Executives, legal team, PR, compliance, and even insurance stakeholders all have a role to play in your incident response plan. So during a tabletop, we invite the entire incident response team, including executives, including legal, including insurance stakeholders, because a breach impacts the entire business, right? Not just an IT or IT security teams. Now, the real test during a cyber incident isn't the technical response itself. It's leadership and decision making. It's communication under pressure. So these exercises give leaders and responders a chance to practice those decisions before a real crisis hits. Now, we design these scenarios to reflect today's evolving threat landscape. We can incorporate simulated incidents for ransomware, insider threat, supply chain breaches, business email compromise, critical system or vulnerability exploit. The idea is to show how fast things can escalate and why a swift, coordinated response plan is necessary. The facilitator usually introduces injects, which is an initial point of entry of a threat actor. From there could be unexpected developments or twists that forces the team to adopt. And just like in real life, the situation can change in minutes, and your team must be ready to respond to those changing situations. After the exercise, we review what went well, where we can improve. This is where the biggest value comes, identifying opportunities to strengthen your incident response plan, identifying opportunities to improve your response procedures, to keep your contact list up to date, to clarify roles and responsibilities. Ideally, these exercises help train and develop your capabilities to respond more effectively. They bring the whole organization together to understand, prepare, and respond to threats. The goal is to minimize the potential impact, whether it's operational impact, reputational impact, financial impact, legal impact. We make sure that the response efforts are coordinated and aligned and follow industry best practice to contain and reduce the impact to the organization. Now, most importantly, a tabletop exercise puts everyone on the same page through hands-on practical experience. So when a real attack happens, nobody is guessing what to do. It acts as a test and practice for your IR plan. Now, a lot of people are hesitant to participate in a tabletop exercise because they feel it's a test of their skills, right? It's rather a test of your incident response plan to ensure that you have a mature plan and you have the response procedures defined. Now let's focus on the technical side of tabletop exercises. These sessions allow our SOC team, IT teams, network teams, cloud teams to test whether our playbooks and procedures actually hold up under pressure. We use custom scenarios tailored to your environment, right? We're not using generic cases. That way, we are validating the incident response plan against real world threats that we are likely to face. For example, in one tabletop, we simulated a ransomware attack on a customer's ERP system, and it was right before quarter end reporting. That forced both IT and finance leaders to think through business continuity planning and regulatory reporting deadlines. Now, technical teams, they need to prove that alerts are detected and responded to in time. Containment measures are properly defined and effective, and recovery steps are practical. A tabletop exercise shows us where delays or blind spots exist in detection, containment, and recovery steps. I remember in one of the tabletops that I was hosting, we simulated a phishing campaign that bypassed the email filters and compromised a privilege account. The SOC had to show how quickly they detect abnormal logins and how they contain the account, and whether recovery steps like MFA were incorporated or not. They reviewed access controls. They reviewed what systems the malicious threat actor connected to using the compromised account. And the investigation revealed that while detection was fast, recovery steps weren't as well documented as they should have been, right? So one of the takeaways was improve on the recovery of a compromised account. Now, no incident happens in a silo. These exercises test how well different technical groups, your SOC group, your IT teams, infrastructure, cloud teams, and even external vendors and partners can work together in real time. I remember once we built a scenario around a SaaS provider outage caused by a suspected breach. The SOC, IT, and cloud teams had to work together while also coordinating the response effort with the vendor's incident response contacts. The exercise highlighted how critical it is to have vendor escalation contacts up to date, because in that scenario, we had key critical contacts missing. In real life, waiting hours for the right person at a provider, at a service provider, could be disastrous, right? Because it allows the threat to laterally move and cause even significant damage or cause data exfiltration. Now, it's not just about fixing the problem, it's also about preserving the log data and evidence for investigators. It could be for legal purposes, insurance purposes, whatever the case may be. The tabletop tests the ability of a disciplined, defined forensics best practices, right? In a tabletop simulation, we tested whether logs from an impacted database could be preserved before the system was restored. The SOC team initially jumped to containment and system recovery was being prioritized, but in doing so, they would have wiped key forensics evidence. The exercise showed us that it is important to capture volatile data first, which means that memory dumps, logs, screenshots with regards to how the attacker may have gained footprint into our environment and compromised that database. Regardless, it was a good learning exercise for us to understand the importance of preserving forensics evidence. One of the hard choices when it comes to containing the system, typically it's about shutting down the systems versus keeping things running to preserve business continuity. Now, practicing these types of scenarios in advance will help build capabilities and confidence in addressing containment of critical systems or applications which have a business impact or an operational impact in real situation. I remember we tested a use case where a malware was found on a customer-facing e-commerce server. Now, the technical recommendation was to immediately contain the asset, take the system offline to stop any data exposure. But the business side argued that downtime during peak shopping hours would cost them a lot of, in fact, thousands of dollars. The exercise forced executives and technical team to then weigh in business continuity against risk exposure. Exactly the kind of decision that needs to be made in real life, often with incomplete information. So then the decision was made to fail over or restore a secondary system, move operations or the e-commerce platform to that secondary system while they understood the impact or the vulnerability that was exploited. Now, there was a risk associated because the backups had the same vulnerability and the same flaws as the primary production server. Regardless, these exercises, they often expose weaknesses, maybe a missing log source, a slow alert escalation, unclear handoff between teams. Typically during a tabletop, the facilitator document these gaps so they can improve and identify areas of improvement and delays in the response efforts. I remember in one of the tabletops I participated in, it simulated a denial of service, distributed denial of service attack that masked a data exfiltration attempt. The SOC realized that they didn't have deep enough logging from the web application firewall to fully trace the attacker's action. It took them nearly 20-30 minutes for the alert to be escalated from a tier 1 analyst to the incident manager. Well, that delay is significant in a real world scenario, right? So those gaps were documented. They invested in both improving logging capabilities and a revised escalation protocol, ensuring that any customer facing or public facing applications which host critical data should be treated as a critical incident rather than a low or medium severity incident. Regardless, without a tabletop, they might not have discovered those flaws, those weaknesses, those gaps until after a real incident. Now, tabletops are not just for the technical team, right? So let's shift our focus to the executive tabletop. While the technical team practices the playbooks, focuses on containment, eradication, and recovery, leadership tabletops prepare for decision makers to guide the organization through a crisis. Now, executives, they face the reality of making high stakes decisions, right, with limited information during an incident. Tabletops gives them a practical way to practice in a safe environment key decision making before a real crisis hits. In one of the exercises, we simulated a distributed denial of service attack that knocked out the public website, right? Now, this was in between or during a major product launch, and it was all a simulated incident. Executives had to decide whether to delay the launch or divert customers to an alternative channel or push forward while the technical teams are fighting against the attack, forcing the leadership team to make a business critical decision with very limited information and under time pressure. And this would have been the case if it was a real crisis situation. So these exercises, they eliminate confusion by defining what decisions need to be made and who has the authority to decide. For example, do we need to notify regulators, approve downtime, engage law enforcement? These are all valid questions that the leadership team needs to decide upon. In another tabletop, two executives assumed that they both had the authority to notify regulators. Now, that duplication would have caused confusion and delays in a real event. The exercise clarified the role. Legal had the final authority on regulatory notifications for that organization, while the chief operating officer was accountable for approving system shutdowns, recovery objectives. So now, after the tabletop, everyone understood who owns what decision making before an actual breach occurs. Now, practicing communication, both internal and external, is also beneficial. Leaders, they need to rehearse what to say to employees, what message should go to the customers and to the media and to the regulators, right? Getting this right in an exercise helps avoid costly missteps during an actual breach. We ran a scenario where we had a mock journalist email asking for comment on rumors of a breach. The communications team drafted a quick response, but executives realized it hadn't been cleared with legal. This exercise showed the risk of moving too fast without alignment and led us to create pre-approved messaging templates for future use. Now, a cyber crisis isn't just IT problems. Oftentimes, the tabletops, they bring in the C-suite, the board reps, the legal advisors, PR teams, and insurance providers, so everyone works from the same script. In one board level tabletop, the insurance representative highlighted that certain actions, like paying a ransom to a sanctioned entity without their knowledge or proper due diligence, could actually avoid coverage. That was a surprise to some of the executives. Hence, by having legal, PR, and insurance in the same room as the leadership team, reflected how interconnected these roles can be, should be, and why decisions can't be made in isolation. Now, one of the big questions during executive tabletop is, should we notify customers immediately or wait? Do we suspend a critical service? Do we bring in law enforcement? Tabletop allows executives to practice these calls when the stakes are low. We tested a scenario where a customer credit card data appeared on the deep dark web. Executives had to decide whether to notify the customers because it came from their internal database, or whether to wait until forensics confirmed the breach. The discussion exposed different risk tolerances. Marketing wanted to reassure customers right away. Legal wanted confirmation before announcing it. And IT just wanted to focus on containment, practicing recovery or detection of vulnerabilities that may have been exploited. Now, the tabletop helped the team align on criteria for making the call in real life. So in short, a tabletop exercise, it builds confidence, it builds alignment across businesses and security teams. Business and security leaders, they can learn how to work as one team, which results in faster, more coordinated responses when the real incident occurs. One of the biggest benefits we have seen is confidence. In a recent tabletop, after working through a simulated insider threat, the CEO commented that he finally understood how the SOC's technical work is connected to board level risk reporting and board level risk management. That alignment meant that if a real incident happened tomorrow, leadership and technical teams would already be on the same page, understanding the risk and the response efforts. So to quickly summarize, as we wrap up today's session, I want to take a step back and look at the big picture. We talked through why incident response planning is so important, what the critical components of a strong plan are, and how a tabletop exercise can bring that plan to life. At the core, A mature incident response plan is not just a document, it's a living framework. It combines processes, roles, contacts, escalation paths, and playbooks that reduces chaos and speed up recovery. Without it, even the most talented teams can struggle in the middle of a crisis. We also highlighted that the role of leadership, incidents that are not just IT problem, but discussing business issues, identifying clear decision-making authority, and strong crisis communication from executives are what guides an organization through turbulence. Preparation truly makes the difference. Regular testing, rehearsals, tabletop exercises, they all minimize downtime. They cut cost and they protect your reputation. Just like a fire drill, you hope you'll never need it, but if you do, you'll be grateful that you practiced. Finally, incident response is not a job for a single department or it's not an IT issue, it's a team effort. Success requires cross-functional coordination. Whether it's between IT, legal, HR, communication, vendors, insurance, and executive leadership team, all are pulled together in a crisis situation and all should work with the same objective of reducing the risk to the organization. Everyone should know their role, everyone should know what they are responsible for and how to reduce the impact. So, my message to you as we close this is don't let your incident response plan collect dust. Keep it current, update it, test it often, and involve your entire leadership team. The time to prepare is now, not in the middle of a crisis situation or a major breach. And by investing in a tabletop exercise and a mature incident response plan, you're investing in your organization's resilience, you're adhering to compliance and regulatory mandates, and you are building a risk reduction tool for your organization. With that said, we'll have a few minutes to respond to any questions you may have. I'll refer back to Bev to see if there are any questions from the broader audience.
Yes, thank you. That was really, really good. And I like how you ended it. The time to act is now, not when there's the crisis and you're scrambling. Let's be prepared. So it takes me to a couple of our questions. One person said, we already have a basic IR plan, but it hasn't been tested in a while. What's the best way to get started with tabletop exercises without overwhelming our entire team?
Well, that's a great question. The key is to start small. You don't need to launch a massive full day simulation right out of the gate, right? Begin with a simple tabletop. Schedule 30 minutes with the team and talk about phishing. Talk about how are we going to contain an end user machine if there's a malware. Talk about an impact of containing or isolating a critical system which runs business critical applications, right? And run it with just the core incident response team members. Maybe run a technical tabletop, and then the findings of that technical tabletop can be discussed with one executive, right? Keep it short, limit it to under an hour. And once the team is comfortable, expand it to include additional stakeholders. Add more complex scenarios, right? It's all about building confidence step by step and obviously not overwhelming the team on day one.
I love it. I love it. I love that staged approach. So you get everybody involved. Second question. What are some common mistakes or red flags you see in IR plans that look good on paper but fail during like a real incident, like when things really happen?
I think common mistakes, there are way too many to list, but one of the biggest red flags is over-reliance on a generic template, right? Plans would often say notify stakeholders, but it doesn't say who or how, right? And that's kind of useless at 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning because we don't know which stakeholder, we don't know how to reach out to that stakeholder.
Right.
Another common issue is outdated contact list, right? Numbers that don't work, phone numbers that have been reassigned. I see some plans, they looked really polished, but they haven't been tested. And the first time people try to use them is during an incident or during a tabletop, right? Which is a good thing, because if you're testing it during a tabletop, then you can find the gaps and you can fix it. But just making sure that you don't have generic terminologies there. Contact stakeholder, you have very specific action items, and your contact list is up to date. Oftentimes, I see that they have office phone numbers instead of personal phone numbers or cell numbers for reaching out to stakeholders outside business hours.
Yeah, something as simple as that could be, really detrimental, really important rather. Question number 3. When an incident happens outside business hours, how do you recommend ensuring the right people are actually reachable? So that came in right as you said that. So again, it's about having people's cell phone numbers, personal numbers, get to know the people that you were connected with so that everybody's connected.
Absolutely. And I think one more, what I would like to add on top is have a war room, right? Spin up a conference bridge, invite the right stakeholders to participate in that conference call, in that war room situation. And yeah, don't just rely on emails. Pick up the phone, call someone, text someone. This one organization I was working with, and they had iMessage groups for key stakeholders, right? For the executive team, for the technical team, right? So use communication channels outside of your organization in crisis situations.
Exactly. I'm just looking here on my list. All right, here's one more. For executives who aren't technical, what's the most important thing they should focus on during an incident?
Listen to your incident manager or the technical leadership team, because oftentimes non-technical stakeholders don't understand the technical restrictions or the impact on your systems, your applications. So they can't make the right decision because they don't understand the technical core components. So let's listen to your technical liaison, listen to your CTO, your CIO, your CISO, incorporate their kind of feedback into decision making. But as a non-technical executive, focus on decision making, focus on risk reduction tactics, focus on keeping communication clear and consistent. Also, how can you support your incident response team? Do they need additional resources? Do they need more authority, right? Executives, they set the tone. So if leadership communicates confidently and aligns the business around the response, then the entire organization can respond more effectively. In short, don't try to be an engineer. Be the best decision maker and communicator, and give your team the authority and the resources to remain confident and respond to your threat with clear communication and risk reduction tactics in mind.
That was fabulous. I think we could end on that. I'm just checking my iPad here. And the notes, I don't think we have any other questions. That was a solid few number of questions that we had. Gentlemen, this was fabulous. If there's not any other questions, you could put it into the chat. And if not, we thank you for your time. You're taking your energy, and I'm sorry about the technical problem we had at the start of this, but we have recovered, and everybody who was on the one bridge came over to this bridge. So thank you for your patience and for being flexible. And gentlemen, thank you for your time, and we will see you again next month. Take care.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, everyone.